Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at a very obscure anthology comic that came out from Piranha Press, which was an imprint of DC Comics in the early 90's. They were trying to start a pretty much adults only type imprint. Getting away from genre for the most part. And this was an anthology they published, showcasing a lot of the Piranha creators and others. And there's some heavy hitters in these. And yet, these remain obscure. So obscure that I forgot I owned them. I was looking through my shelves the other day, and I totally forgot about these. But luckily I saved these all these years, because there's some top-notch shit in here. And these were published like between 1992 and 1993. There's only 3 issues, but unlike other anthologies, which usually last about 3 issues if they're lucky, this was planned to be that way. It was a limited series, which is kind of smart because most anthologies just don't last anyway. So they kind of figured it out so they didn't look like they had a failure on their hands. But each one has a theme: phobias, family, storytellers. And for the most part, the artists and writers stick within that theme. So it's kind of an interesting idea for an anthology comic. And yeah, as you'll see, there's some really dynamite stuff in here. Okay, number 1, Phobias. Covered by Dave McKean. Very nice. This is Dave McKean was on top of the world at this point. So we have a very stylishly designed contents page. Dale Crane, formerly of Fantagraphics, did the design work on this. Yeah, I kind of miss Piranha. They had some really interesting stuff. Probably their most, at least long-running comic was Beautiful Stories for Ugly Children, which wasn't really a comic. It was heavily illustrated prose. Really good stuff. I have almost all of those. Really fun, great writing and great art. Little intro page telling you about the creators. So the first story here, what a way to start. It's the Arkham Asylum team of Grant Morrison and Dave McKean. A Glass of Water. This is a very odd comic. It's lots of photos and lots of photo-referenced art. Very photo-referenced. Almost sometimes I can't tell if it's a photo or if it's Dave McKean drawing a photo. He's that skillful that you can't really tell. Almost the whole comic, though, is just this woman kind of doing a soliloquy. Or, just talking to the reader. As you can see, every panel is pretty much that. Every now and then she looks out the window. Sometimes when she's thinking about certain things, the art style will change, it'll fade. And she's basically this woman just talking about her life. She seems like a kind of very, lonely, middle-aged woman. She's a librarian, kind of provincial in her thinking. She's not this iconoclast or weirdo by any means. She's just a very normal, typical lady. The thing is about this comic that's interesting too, well, it's not interesting and it's almost annoying, I should say, is that this could have just been a short film. These just look like stills from a short film, like a nice little short film where the actress just talks to the camera. I don't really understand why it's a comic, maybe. It's kind of doesn't really use the grammar and syntax of sequential narrative, if you will, to its utmost. But I mean, yeah, look at this art. Beautiful art. The writing's great. Grant Morrison's really delineating this woman's character just in her little, it's just very workaday dialogue. She's just kind of chatting and making little jokes that are kind of, like jokes a middle-aged librarian would tell. But she eventually tells the story of how this charming library customer kind of, seduces her. And look at this right here. Sorry to interrupt, but so he does some interesting things with the art and gets back to the photorealism. Sometimes I don't quite understand. I do like how this could be used as some dramatic effect. But, like she's flashing back or something, or maybe lying to herself or some kind of thing. But it just seems like, I don't know if there's a rhyme or reason to it. But it is interesting graphically. Man, that Dave McKean. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's get back to the story. So this guy seduces her. Turns out he's this con man. And, she has a little bit of savings. And he takes her for them. And he swindles her. And she's thinking, she's dodging the story for a long time. And when she finally tells it, you can tell it's very painful for her to recount this. She doesn't want to think about it or remember it. I like how it does seem to be getting darker as if the day is, proceeding to dusk and to night. And then it looks like she loses her job at the library because some of her shitty coworkers find out about, everyone finds out about it. It's news. And she throws a giant Encyclopedia Britannica at one of this coworker's head who's being a total bitch to her. And they tell her to go home. So, this poor librarian, that's all she had. And she's talking about making her dad's bed. I guess her dad died years ago, but she still keeps his room the same. Just a very lonely woman. She talks about how nobody ever gave me flowers like that charlatan guy, except for my dad. I thought it was kind of sweet. Her dad used to bring flowers on Valentine's Day and leave them on the kitchen table. And then he would tell his daughter, "I see you've got a secret admirer." Kind of a sweet thing to do. And this is really creepy here. It looks like her eyes are just turning into sockets. I don't know, it just looks pretty scary. And we realize she's talking to us, basically explaining how, I wanted to have this elaborate suicide, but on a librarian's wages, I could only afford one rose. And we see that she's already taken a full bottle of pills. And we see the rose on the last panel. Yeah, really, like I said, really well written, beautifully drawn, but not really using the best parts of comic book storytelling to its advantage. This is Andy Helfer, wrote a lot of stuff for DC. He was an editor. And Glenn Barr, really great cartoonist. Used to do a lot of covers for Film Threat magazine. Every now and then he did comics, but he'd pop up in all kinds of mainstream magazines as a, graphic designer, cover artist. He's got a really great cartoony style. This is just, I don't know if it's Andy Helfer telling a story in the first person, but it almost sounds like it's autobio. It seems very personal, but who knows? But it's just about this guy, and he's afraid of flying. And just explaining all the reasons why flying is just not only scary for him, just annoying, and he doesn't do it anymore. He's saying how, everyone loves to say, you have more of a chance of dying in a car than an airplane. But of course he brings up the point, if you die in a car, it's pretty quick. The whole thing about dying in a plane is there's a few minutes while that plane's going down. And you're stuck with all these strangers and they all know they're going to die. There's something about that's pretty fucking terrifying. I don't know if this is a true story, but he recounts about the space shuttle, the Challenger that exploded. Apparently that didn't kill him. Their little, hull fell all the way into the ocean, probably took a minute. And, he's just terrified thinking about what that would have been like. He meets this guy who tells him a story about a plane crash where he survived. His chair was flung like in half an acre away from the plane, and he somehow, got up. He's dazed. He's walking. He sees this person from the plane wreck who's like, "How do I look?" And he looks like a fucking zombie. Look at him. He's like, half of his head is ripped off. His brain is poking out. So he goes to the hospital, and they're just like, "You're fine." And it turns out his back is broken. I don't know how he could have been walking around. I guess it was like pure shock. And kind of crappy doctors at this hospital don't even notice his back is broken. But he survived. And then the narrator recounts his main reason for being scared of flying. When he was a little boy, he was in a plane, accident. He saw the engine blow on the right side, or on one of the sides. He's with his grandmother. The stewardesses are no help at all. They're just panicking, freaking out. The grandmother looks like a heart attack. He's trying to get help. Of course, nobody cares. Everyone's like, "We're going to die." Sounds like really traumatic. But they landed safely. And the grandmother actually lived. But she was taken away in an ambulance. Just too much excitement. Man, I really like this Glenn Barr cartooning. I wish he did more comics. And he takes train trips a lot. And he notices that he meets a lot of fellow travelers on these trains. No pun intended. Other people were afraid of flying. Because that's pretty much the only people who take trains now, I imagine. Not many people like to go by train because it's so slow. This is a really interesting story, Arona, by David Quinn, the guy who wrote Faust, that really like X-rated kind of a superhero, but more of a horror comic from the 80s. It was a black and white. I've tried to read those, and they're pretty annoying. I don't know, just trying to be so dark and poetic in the captions. It was pretty obnoxious, and just no real plot to speak of that's intriguing. It's just like lots of posing, basically. It's like the comic a teenage goth would write, to be cool. Art by Gil Ashby. I don't know of this guy. I have a feeling he's just like some graphic design guy who decided, hey, I'd like to do a comic. Because it is very skillful, very basically photo-referenced and photorealistic. Almost a little too photo-referenced for my liking, but it looks like this guy probably saw Dave McKean's work and was like, hey, I can do that. And Arona is about this woman, Arona, and she's an agoraphobic. And we're just seeing her thoughts and just the kind of private hell she lives in. She's a chain smoker to, I guess, alleviate her whatever, agoraphobia. She lives with a boyfriend who's a really sweet guy, and she resents it. Like in her head, she's just thinking, just so annoying how he always tries to like make me feel better. He's always trying to make her feel better because he knows she has bad days and good days, Something I wanted to comment about this, I don't know if it was the early 90s when this full color production, good paper was coming more into the fore. They still didn't figure out certain things. Like so many of these captions are almost unreadable. I think we passed one earlier. Yeah, that very first one is almost illegible because they didn't, make the coloring a little different. But as you can see, the art's pretty nice. I like her face. This woman has a really interesting face. She's a talent. She's from Italy, the character. And so she's always pushing him away. Just kind of interesting seeing what's going through her head. It's just like a little, character study of this kind of messed up woman. So she has to get cigarettes. She's out. And he agrees to go with her to be the, helping hand, which she appreciates, but she also resents. Like, it's insulting to her. But, she wants him to help her. It's just weird. I'm not agoraphobic, so I don't know. She's reminiscing about her childhood, a very unhappy childhood in Italy. I think they were gypsies and very poor. And her parents were constantly arguing. But then one day she meets this man in Italy when she's a little girl. And he buys her some pastries. So, I don't know, I guess maybe that was the one time someone was nice to her. But it's a very vivid memory for her. When I first read the comic, I assumed, because, it's a 90s, early 90s comic. I was like, he's a pedo, and this is going to explain her behavior because she was molested. It seems like, no, he just wanted to feed this poor gypsy girl. Even though the baker, the woman at the bakery is just, like, giving him shit about it. Man, I love her schnoz. That's a great schnoz. Look at this positively David Mack kabuki here thing going on at the end. You could totally mistake that for David Mack, except just not as well drawn. It's pretty well drawn, but David Mack's got that amazing style. So that's pretty much all it is, a little character vignette study. This guy was great. Piranha Press put out a lot of stuff by him. Fantagraphics kind of discovered him. He was in a lot of their anthologies, like Prime Cuts and stuff. But Piranha utilized him a lot. Alex Stevens. And all of his comics look like this. Never word balloons. Usually lots of horizontal panels like that. With the words outside of the panel. This is a little story about, it's called Rising Hill. This guy who every week he takes the one train to Rising Hill. And normally he's just shut in his home. So he looks forward to this trip so much. But apparently this is the very last train to Rising Hill. They're canceling the train line because not many people go. And he's just thinking about all the people on the train, this widower and her child. Alex Stevens was pretty good. I love his sense of color. Just really painterly kind of, not painterly in this like Frazetta sense of color choices. This young man who reminds him of himself as a young man. Because now he's kind of frail, he has all these infirmities. He can't drive. He looks pretty good, but he really is kind of messed up physically. This looks like an old bluesman comes on, or at least an old guitarist. Maybe I said that because he's black. Sorry about that, but you see an old black guy with a guitar in movies or comics, you assume he's a bluesman. And see here, like Alex Stevens would do this, just get really abstract. God, I love his art. I forgot how much I liked Alex Stevens. Just very, very painterly. I'm usually not a fan of these guys who don't use word balloons and, you do the blocks of text like Prince Valiant. But with him, I don't mind so much. So it's the very last train to Rising Hill. Everyone gets off. People say their goodbyes. It's a sad, melancholy thing. And he checks himself into a hospital. And I assume he's going to live there for the rest of his life. So not much of a story, just a little, once again, a little character study. A lot of these seem to be like that. They're really trying to, get away from the genre storytelling and just, these are like short stories that could be the New Yorker or something like that. There's not a Blood and Thunder or anything. This is a nice story. It's a Russell Braun, who went on to bigger fame, drawing a lot of the boys' comics. Whenever Derek Robertson couldn't draw one, Russell Braun was there. It's kind of weird. I went to high school with this guy. I didn't really know him that well. And I assume he liked comics in high school because he quickly went on, as soon as he graduated, he went on to be a comic book artist, working for DC mostly. And, there were so few comic fans in my school. I wish I knew. I would have chatted him up more. But this is great. I'm not a huge fan of Russell Braun's stuff on, say, The Boys. It's good, but just, I don't know, something a little stilted. It's not quite there. usually in the faces. But this, I love the way this comic is drawn. The shading, the muted colors. It's called Barney the Burning Banker. And this guy comes home. No explanation why this banker has a flaming head. Nobody seems to care. He's like Ghost Rider, but I guess he's Ghost Underwriter. And he comes home one day and his goldfish dead. His goldfish Beowulf. That's the name of his goldfish. And he is distraught. Apparently, it was his only friend. So he's going to try to flush it, but he's like, I can't do that. He deserves a better, funeral than that. So he reminisces. He has a flashback to when one of his office workers gave him this goldfish. And he takes it home. And I guess that night, I don't even know if this is true, if there's big bugs that will attack goldfish. But I don't know, this huge like roach thing crawls up to the lip of the goldfish bowl. And it reaches down. And the goldfish rips his legs off. One of his legs. Of this giant bug. And in the morning, he sees the dead bug. And he's like, just like Beowulf ripped off Grendel's arm in combat. So that's why he named him Beowulf. So the next few months are blissful for Barney. He's never had a friend, and he just loves sitting with the fish, listening to music and reading. But now the flashback's over, and he figures he's going to give him like a Viking funeral. He gets a box full of matches. That's nice here with everything else is so muted, but sometimes there's just like really interesting colors. Yeah, I like this. I wish there was more Barney the Burning Baker. And so he puts the goldfish in the box of matches and sets it out into the East River. I think it's like the East River. It's some polluted, nasty body of water. So I just assumed it was the East River in New York City. And he says he realizes it's just, going out into this cesspool of a river. He comes to see that he wasn't here to see off his companion on his trip to heaven. Now he feels like he was sending him off to hell. But then a wonderful thing happens. The river's so polluted, there's a giant oil slick. And when it hits it, it just makes this beautiful, huge fire explosion worthy of his, his goldfish. And look at that. That's beautiful. Just that drawing and the coloring there, I think. But then the rain poured down once more. So he's going back to his shitty life, even though that was a nice little moment for him. Like I said, I like this design. Every back cover would show little clips from each comic. Okay, number 2, Family. Cover by Kyle Baker. I think we all know Kyle Baker, right? Why I Hate Saturn, Cowboy Wally. It's got so many things. The Shadow. I can't even list them all off. But he's utilized many styles in his life as a cartoonist. But I really think this early 90s Kyle Baker, it's one of my favorites of his styles. I mean, he's really good at every style he's tried, but like this is just, to me, classic Kyle Baker. Very humorous, like he's just no word balloons, always does this, the panel and then the dialogue under. And this guy's on a date, and all of a sudden the zombie attacks him, and it knows his name. It says Lester. And Lester punches his head right off. And she says, what the hell was that? It knew your name. And so she's like, just be honest with me. So he tells her the story. He explains the story behind the zombie. So back in high school, one day, he's this nerdy guy. And one day, the most popular, cutest cheerleader girl in school says, hey, you want to take me to the prom? And he's like, what? And he's just so nervous. He's like thinking out loud. It's kind of annoying her. And he's like, well, this isn't just a pity date, is it? And she says, he says, I wouldn't want you to go out with me just because my father died yesterday out of pity. And she's like, no, I didn't even know your father died. It's pity because you're an unpopular geek. So it is a pity date, but not because your father died. So he's like, okay, cool. And, I can't read all the dialogue, or they take the video down, but it's all pretty humorous. It's like really good comedy writing, like if this was a screenplay for a movie. Really good banter. So then later that night, his father comes home, who died yesterday. And he's talking and everything, but he seems kind of, look at him, I'll try to find a better panel. Look, it's just like, and the mother's like, what's that? What's wrong? What the hell happened? It's like, don't worry about it, I'm fine. And so it seems like the father's back, but he's obviously very different. The neighbor who, coincidentally, one of the neighbors died like a week before, he comes back to life with his tongue lolling out and comes to visit the father. And they're sitting there talking about like, so I guess we're dead and we came back. And it's like, shouldn't we be eating people? Isn't that what people like us should be doing? And let me see the exact thing. I'm trying to find the dialogue. Yeah, think we supposed to eat people. Anyone know you're here? So they decide to do it. And they say, you like Italian? Let's go eat Mrs. Mostriano down the street. So they do. They attack her and they eat her. And I guess they like it because they're going to keep going. Then they realize, though, that, hey, all those guys in the graveyard, they're probably having a hard time breaking out of their graves because they're, not freshly interred. Maybe we'll help them so they can come back to life. We'll, get some pickaxes and break them out. And they get in a fight when they're there. And they totally, their brains are poking out. They've totally kind of messed each other up. So they get these hats to cover it. And then same thing happens again the next day. So they look even worse. And then that night, Satan appears. And Satan basically says, yeah, you better go to the graveyard and wake up all those dead guys, basically. Get them out of their graves. Because I'm gonna need you guys for a job. And so that at midnight, they dig them all up. Satan is saying, your main plan is Saturday night, where I want you all to attack the Lover's Lane on prom night. And they're like, why? And it's like, I've always hated popular teenagers who had cars and got laid. Just do it. So prom night, the father tries to lock up the son in the closet because he still loves his son, even though he's a zombie. He doesn't want him to be at Lover's Lane where this massacre is going to happen. So he's a little late for his date. They get in an argument. But she goes along with him to Lover's Lane, and the zombies attack. And Lester has a flamethrower in the back, and he just goes to town on these zombies, frying them up. And while he's doing that, the cheerleader's like, you're a hero. I love you, Lester. I love you, Lester Fenton. It's pretty goofy. Excuse me. So now we flash back. He's on that date, older Lester. And he's done telling her the story. He says, yeah, every now and then, some of the survivors of that night still attack me. But they're pretty old now, so it's pretty easy to knock their heads off. And when he walks her to her door, she just slams the door in his face. She was not amused. This is Brothers and Sisters by the Amazing Man team of Bob Rozakis and Stephen DiStefano. Amazing Man was like this weird kids comic from DC. Very odd that they published it because it was like a kids comic, but it was kind of quirky, almost like an indie comic. It was just odd. I never really read it, but maybe I should. I just figured Bob Rozakis never wrote anything good in his life, so why would he start in the 80s? But maybe he did, because this isn't bad. I mean, it's whatever it is. It is what it is. But it's kind of interesting, weird little comic. It just shows various brothers and sisters. And we see this old guy in his house trying to watch Leave It to Beaver. These kids outside are making a racket. They're playing like war. And one of them starts beating on the little one really harshly. So the other one joins in and he says, "You can't do that." "Why not? You did." "I'm allowed. I'm his brother." So just showing the weird sibling bonds. This guy and his wife, I guess her brother's like freeloading, couch surfing for 6 months there, and he's giving her shit about it, calling him a bum. Then we see this little kid who's about to push his sister out like the 4th-story window in a carpet, rolled up in a carpet. And like, "It's a flying carpet, Ma." And the sister's like, "But Ma, it was my idea." We keep coming back to that old guy, slowly getting around to opening this letter. Then we see these 2 old sisters. They're kind of cute. One sister, I guess they haven't seen each other in a while. She's like, "I wouldn't miss the 50th birthday of my sister." I just love the way they're just so happily dancing, and they just love each other a lot. It's cute. We see this like dude and his little sisters, typical bratty little sister bothering him. And he's just like, get away from me. And he's going to meet like the new girl on the block, who's very cute. And he's trying to play it cool. But she speaks first. And that totally throws off his game. And he kind of just stutters and walks off. And the little sister thinks that's hilarious. Two more siblings. This is very has a nice joy to it, this comic. It's kind of sweet, all these little relationships. But, it's not much. It's just a little glimpses into these people's lives. And we finally realize with the old guy in watching Leave It to Beaver, I guess it's his brother. And I guess this old guy sold his half of the family business to his brother years ago, but kind of has come to regret it and is always trying to get more money out of his brother. And he's like, "Dude, you sold me half the business. Enough of this shit. I'm not giving you another penny." And he yells at the kids to be quiet outside. And then he just raises the volume of Leave It to Beaver. And that's the end. This is kind of weird. Dean Motter, the guy who created Mr. X in the 80s, he has this comic called Hostage. I never knew this, but I guess his brother was a hostage of like Islamic terrorists in the 80s for 6 years. They had him just in this room, kind of torturing him and starving him. And this is just like the way he tells the story is like little snippets of TV. Just some having like commercials and stuff. But then it gets more and more around to little news reports about this incident. I do not like this art. When Dean Motter tried to do this painted art, it's really bad. It's like, like senior in high school art class. Bad. So basically it seemed like this guy was a political football that was fumbled. The government didn't even want to acknowledge him. It would be like admitting that we're talking to terrorists. So they just left this. He was a reporter for the AP Newswire. Let him rot. American citizen. And they just let him rot for 6-7 years or so. So kind of an interesting story in real life. But I don't know, this comic, I like that green. Yeah, it's Dean Motter shouldn't paint. Here he's in his cell, he's drawing, counting down the days. This guy's funny as hell. He had a comic for Piranha Press. Douglas Michael, I think I've seen him in some like anthologies here and there. His stuff is just, reminds me of like, I don't know, like it would be National Lampoon, like almost Rick Geary. Not as good as Rick Geary, but like that same fun sense of humor and just crazy stuff, imaginative. So one day this baby is born without a heart. Totally alive though. It seems fine, but they're like any day it could die. So he becomes a kind of a celebrity. The whole country is reading about him. There's even a TV show with the mother and the baby, and they basically, there's a 1-800 number. So they're kind of like just getting millions of dollars from people playing on their sympathy. And, but then it turns out that the baby with the no heart was actually a baby impersonator, an 8-year-old with a glandular problem. And it turns out there was a real baby that is like locked away in a hospital somewhere. But she figured that she couldn't have a TV show with that, you know, the real one. And then one day the father of the baby shows up and kills some of the doctors that were, you know, kind of keeping this baby under wraps. Oh, and he kills the mother, sorry, too. These are the weird kind of touches, Douglas Michael, that this guy's a floral, what do you call it, a florist. And he doesn't speak one word at his trial. Rather, he expresses himself through artfully designed floral arrangements. Ross is not competent to stand trial bouquet, a lovely and eloquent display of colorful mums, daisies, and shell casings. So that's how he would communicate in the trial. So then apparently there's a rumor of this woman gave birth to a little baby heart, but nobody can find her. So there's this big thing where they want to find that heart and put it back in the baby. And they finally do. It becomes this big custody thing, but the baby gets the heart, basically. These great surgeons insert this heart into the baby. And the strange thing is that it kills the baby. So now it's got a living heart thumping away, but the baby is dead. Everything else about him. And he actually starts to decay. But he's still got a beating heart in him. So it's like the baby could not be considered legally dead unless the heart was stopped or removed. But if the baby was not legally dead, then removing or even stopping the heart would be murder. Therefore, despite all appearances to the contrary, the last wish baby, that's what they call him, the last wish baby, was in the eyes of the law very much alive. So it changes everyone's thoughts about death. Is like just how some people argue now about like, where does life begin? And now America starts thinking, where does death end? Is this person really dead? People start bombing funeral homes and protesting at burial services. And all these people who are dead are just like hanging out at these meetings, these political groups, saying, and so I guess President Bush signs into law the Last Wish Baby Bill, which basically gives legal rights to dead people. And of course, the first thing we do is elect the corpse of Ronald Reagan to lead us into a bright future. And he builds this giant pyramid around all of the United States. And it stood as a symbol to all that here was entombed, whose people sought no light to guide them and silenced any sound that might stir them, except for the never-ceasing heart of the original Last Wish baby, which is still thumping away. This is good stuff. And he's got a great cartoony style. I like it. But man, he's a clever writer. I gotta find more of that guy's stuff. This is Stockman by Douglas Williams and Brian Stelfreeze. It's rare to see Brian Stelfreeze drawing interiors. That guy usually just does covers. And this is a very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of an opaque story. It leaves a lot up to the reader to figure out what happened. It's just not very clear. It's not like incompetent. I think the writer wanted it to be that way. Little bits of dialogue. We kind of know some bad things happened. We don't know quite what. But, that's how life is sometimes. Sometimes you don't know the full story. But I really like this painted art by Stelfreeze. His drawing's not that great. I just love his sense of colors. I mean, he's a pretty good artist, but there's some of the it's a little Some of the panels aren't as well drawn as others. It's not very consistent throughout. So this guy, Stockman, I don't know if his name is Stockman or he's a stockman. He has cattle. And he's remembering his uncle who, you know, raised him. I guess his father died young. And one of the first memories he has is these baby coyotes. He, you know, forces the kid to light him on fire. Because he's like, coyotes and cows don't mix. We gotta kill all the coyotes or they'll be fucking with our cows forever. And these cute little coyotes, he torches them. And then there's something like, so he's got a stepdaughter, and apparently he's been like, you know, staring at her and looking at her and lusting after her. And she seems to know it, and it's just like, you know, never look at me that way again, you fucking perv. And this guy, basically, his whole life, his job is killing lots of critters. Killing bears, killing little mountain lion cubs. And his wife doesn't like it. Seems like they don't have a very good marriage. I mean, she can sense that this guy is just a cold, brutal murderer, basically. So then, obviously, yes, I think he finally, like, I don't know if he raped his stepdaughter. Maybe he killed her. I don't even know. You really aren't given the answers. But I think she's alive at the end. But she's wrapped up in this towel. He probably tried to force himself on her. And while he's waiting for the cops to come, he just can't stand the shame of a trial. Puts the gun in his mouth. He's thinking about that baby coyote. Sees his stepdaughter screaming. Probably he's thinking about, you know, what he did. And then right before he pulls the trigger, he hears a coyote. Sounds like a woman, but it also sounds like a coyote. Here he is on the porch. I kind of like this pull away, and you see the cop car heading towards him, and then he's on his back. You don't see his head blown off, but it's obvious. Once again, illegible caption there. It's kind of annoying, this printing. It's not like shiny paper. It's kind of like, it's better than most comics, you know, normal comics at the time, but it's not full-on slick one. This is a very curious comic. I think I know what's going on in it, but I'm not quite sure. We see this female director doing a movie, like a serious film about life in the projects. And this interview is talking to her. And he's like, what do you think about this other director, Trevor Grant? He's a block away in the same projects doing his movie. And his is like a big Hollywood production because he does movies about, you know, like crack gangs and posses, you know, fighting each other, which is way more, you know, bankable. And another interviewer is talking to him, kind of giving him grief about, like, you know, people say you don't have good woman characters. And he's like, let women make their own movies if they want to, if they don't like the messages they see. And then we cut back to the female director, and her whole family helps her make movies. They're like, her mom's the caterer, her dad's like the crew, one of the crew. And then this is where I get confused. I'm sorry. I wish I was a better reader. I gotta say, this art is a little muddied, though. You know, I forgot to tell you who wrote and drew this. Sorry. This is the name of the story. Sister from Around the Way, a Family Stone production. That's the movie the female director's making. By John Figueroa and Kirk Etienne. Yeah, I think this guy Kirk Etienne, you know, was trying to do that painted art. This is probably for the first time or something. Really not coming across. It's a little odd looking. So actually on the female director's set, these actual thugs come up. Gang members. And they're cutting back and forth between the Big Slick movie by Trevor Stone. You know, he's got gang violence. We can see by the more primary colors. These are from the movie. But then right down the street, these actual gangsters are killing, I think one of her crew, one of her crew gotten afoul with these gangsters, and right while he was working, they come up and kill him. And she films it all. She says, give me a camera. It's like, no, don't get up, you're crazy. She's like, give me the camera. So she films it. It's almost like a snuff film, because she's like, hey, I could sell this to the news, and then we could finish our movie. We'll have enough financing if I sell this clip. It's an actual murder on screen. So kind of weird. Kind of strange ending. Okay, the last issue, number 3, Storytellers. Really nice Steve Purcell cover of Sam and Max fame. This is a treat for me. Epicurus the Sage, William Messner Loebs and Sam Keith reuniting to do another Epicurus tale. That was one of the best Piranha Press graphic novels. They had 2 of them. Epicurus the Sage. Young Sam Keith, he was kind of on the way to becoming a superstar. And yet he still did this kind of like fun, adult, humorous comic about Greek philosophy, basically, and Greek mythology. And we see Epicurus with his pal Plato. And of course, they're pondering stuff, as philosophers do. Look at this beautiful Sam Keith art. It's a shame that this isn't in color. The original graphic novels are in beautiful Sam Keith color. And it's still great, but it's a shame. So all of a sudden, Homer shows up with Cassandra, because they're both blind. Homer, of course, the writer of the Iliad and the Odyssey, and Cassandra, she's like a seer. I know there's a better word than that, like a prophetess. So it seems like Homer's a big blowhard. And he introduces them to Cassandra. He says, this is my slave, Cassandra. And he's like, they say, Homer, I thought you were a slave. He's like, of course I'm a slave. A slave can own a slave. Isn't that what democracy is all about? So Epicurus asks her, so you're from Troy? And she wasn't Troy. She totally saw through the whole Trojan horse thing. And that's her curse. She was Apollo's lover. And he gave her the gift of prophecy. But he also gave her this curse that no one would believe her predictions. So she tells everyone, hey, that horse is, full of soldiers. Why do you think there's a trap door in the belly, you morons? But they don't listen to her, of course. Troy is sacked. She's raped, blinded, and sold into slavery. So all of a sudden they feel like this day's getting very hot. And they're like, look out! They're on this dock. And all of a sudden, the sun is being pulled by these, celestial horses, I guess. I love the way he draws these horses. Everything else is all cartoony. But there's something so, I don't know, almost like something from Greek art on a vase, a Grecian urn. Just very simple lines, but very powerful. So Cassandra tells them that Apollo's bastard son, Phaeton, is driving the chariot of the sun, just to, prove he's somebody, to show off. But he can't control the horses. So he's basically going to destroy the whole world. It's going to catch fire. Athens is already burning. So they realize that they're like, oh, I got to catch up to this guy. There's this guy down the street who's... he's made huge wings held together with wax. So I imagine they don't even say his name, but I imagine it's Daedalus. Actually, that could be the son. Daedalus is the father who makes the wings. So Epicurus convinces him to loan him the wings, flies up to the chariot, Phaeton's chariot, and Phaeton's totally has no control. He's just like, shit, I'm fucked. So Epicurus decides, okay, what if we just drive it into the ocean? And that'll put it out. But before that happens, Jove throws a big lightning bolt and destroys it, just as Cassandra predicted earlier. This is a wonderful page. Look at that. That's like some 1970s Bernie Wrightson shit going on. The shit he did for Warren Comics. And he's so young here too. And then Cassandra hooks up with Phaeton. I guess she fucked his dad. Now she's gonna fuck the son. And Homer's totally oblivious. Great stuff. This is really interesting because I've never really read Steve and Max. Sorry, what is it called? Sam and Max. I've seen it though. I've read a little here and there, but oh my God, look how different this art is. This is I love this cartoony color style of his. It's like a great children's book or something, but definitely something's off about it. It would probably creep out a child. But this is wonderful looking stuff. Kind of funny too. And it just has a sense of imagination. And all these crazy characters we're going to meet soon. So her name's Suda, I believe. And her pet rat friend Ernie. And he's fishing one day and he finds a Fiji mermaid who can give them all these wishes. Of course they waste it. She asks for one candy corn. And she gets it. He asks for a hat. And then he asks for another hat. A coonskin hat with the face still on it. Which looks really creepy. I kind of want to get one of those. So they show up at this party. There's this ice cream dude. The soft serve man. And all these crazy characters. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, I would love 50 comics about these characters. Suda and Ernie. Just some really funny, imaginative stuff. So the wishing gets out of hand. Because anyone can do it. As long as you hold the Fiji mermaid, you can make wishes. And they start backfiring. And this guy just says, I wish I were a noxious green gas. And he becomes one. He's like a Native American looking guy with a lottery machine body. This is the mayor. He's a clockwork monkey on wheels. Steam-powered monkey. And the wishes start to go more awry. He says, the baby says, I wish I didn't have to wear diapers. So he has a lobster tail. So, technically he doesn't have to wear diapers, right? And then, Ernie is just a jerk. He doesn't like the soft serve guy. He never did. So he says, I want him to melt. And he does. And it's, kind of horrifying. He's you really feel his pain. He's it hurts. He's got a skeleton underneath, which freaks everyone out. And then when they try to reverse the spell, the Fiji mermaid's dead. They used him too much. And he jumps into this... this pot of spinal meningitis. That was the meal of the evening. He was serving spinal meningitis to all the guests. So they ran out the door. They're like, oh, no good can come from this. And they take off. It's very odd. This is by Damon, this next story, Comic Nirvana, Damon Cardwell and Duncan Eagleson. I think he did a lot of drawing for Vertigo. Looks very much like he's doing at least one period of Kyle Baker's art style, the early one. It's just about this guy who's a failed actor living in Hollywood. He works and lives above a chicken and waffle joint. He's pretty depressed. He's pretty much, feels like a failure. He had a few bit parts and commercials, but he just gave up after a while. He's like, this isn't working out. And then one day he hears this crazy, street person in the dumpster on the street. Irish Johnny Nonstop. And he just almost thinks he's on stage every morning. He does a drum roll on the side of the dumpster. And then he just goes into his spiel, his bit. And every morning he has another crazy kind of comic thing. Comic breakfast for everyone. And our hero is our protagonist is like, wow, he's pretty good. He's kind of funny. He starts writing down all of his bits. He also has a street person girlfriend. And he can hear them like fucking in the dumpster every night, arguing and then fucking. So he starts writing down his routines. And every morning he gets new material from Irish Johnny. And he decides finally, after years of just having no ambition and just being like, this is it. He's like, I'm going to go to the comedy club. I'm going to, you steal some of this shit. And he goes and he's a big hit. The owner of the club says, I want you to, work here regularly. Yeah, this is like barely comics, it's just like that stuff in Epic Illustrated, just heavily illustrated prose. So he's happy as hell. The next morning he wakes up early to get more material from Johnny, but unfortunately, the night before, his girlfriend broke up with him. So now his comedy is all like the typical male comedian stuff about like how stupid women are and, like so many comedians I think in the 80s were like that. Like kind of misogynist and sexist. So he's just like, oh man, he's sold out. He's doing that obvious material now. And he's like, it doesn't matter. I'll finish up my own stuff and make a routine. So it's kind of nice, It looks like the guy has been inspired. He was stealing from this guy, but it inspired him to get on with it and be a successful comedian. Here's another one of those prosy stories. This is by a novelist named, is it here at the beginning? Let me go to the contents, sorry about that. Meg Wolitzer, she's a novelist, or was then, and artist Max Seibel. Never saw that name in comics. I assume a graphic designer type, because this isn't really comics, it's just drawing. It's about this woman who's a young actress in New York City, and she becomes obsessed with this couple across the way who have sex almost every night, a lot of sex. They're always fucking. And to her, it becomes this like entertainment, and she's just fascinated with like, she sits by the window waiting for them to go at it. And she tells her friend Dolly about this. So she's at a party one night, and she meets the guy from across the way. She recognizes him because he's kind of got this. Here, I guess I'll go over to it. Oh, I'm sorry. One other thing I should say is she has a boyfriend who's a struggling actor, but he actually gets an audition and succeeds on a popular TV show. So he moves to LA and he ditches her. So this is the headspace she's in, where she's been abandoned. She's been lonely for a while, and every night she just loves watching these two have sex. Here's an abstract puppet show version of their sex. So here we go. So they're at the party, and Dolly says, oh, I know this guy from an acting class. And this guy comes over, it's him, with the devilish mustache. And luckily he doesn't recognize her. He's never looked back through the window. But she's kind of wigging out. She's like, this is so weird. This is the guy. And then he tells Dolly, the friend, he says, oh, and I also got married. Here, my wife was in the bathroom. Here she comes. And it's not the redhead that she's been watching for months. It's this blonde, pregnant woman. So she realizes that all this time, this guy's been fucking some woman behind his wife's back. And, she's thinking about how she watched this, like, it just seemed like this carefree, wonderful thing going on, fling. But she realizes it's just some sordid shit, And it kind of gets her over her voyeurism. And she just stops watching him. She says at first it's a little hard, but then she's just like, she forgets about it. And she finally has a guy come over to her house, and she happens to look out the window and sees just the woman by herself. the redhead. So we don't know if she's waiting for him. Maybe he finally left her. Who knows? But she closes the curtains and is done with it. That's the ending. So that's it. Fast forward number 1 through 3. Really nice anthology. Definitely quarter bin fare. I've seen these so many times in I guess now dollar bin fare. But I mean, God, so worth it though. I thought they were worth it at $5 a pop. Which, man, in '93 that was a lot for a comic. But they're pretty solid, like 48 pages, and great stuff in all of them. Nothing that bad. Usually in anthologies, there's some real turds. Even the ones that were the worst stuff in here is at least kind of intriguing, at least trying to do something different, So I appreciate that. And a lot of it is succeeding at what it's attempting. So I dig it, and I hope you like it. I hope you find these. I bet you will. They're not hard to find. And Storytellers 1 through 3. I'm sorry, Fast Forward 1 through 3. I think I said that before on accident. Okay, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you here next time at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.